Hey everyone, time for another chocolate history lesson and a little story behind the chocolate that we all enjoy. Today I am going to talk about Guittard Chocolate out of San Francisco. I have a few bars from them. Maybe you have bars lying around from them too. They do a lot for baking chocolate. You'll see their chocolate chips in the grocery store and kind of all over the place. So they are kind of important to chocolate history in the United States, so I thought we'd talk about them today. So they were established in 1868, a long time ago, by Etienne Guittard, who came from France. It's actually the oldest continuously owned family chocolate manufacturer, chocolate company anywhere. So Etienne immigrated to the US. He was born in 1838. He immigrated during the 1850s, during the California Gold Rush. He came out west to see if he could find his fortune, and because he had an uncle whose store he was working in France, whose chocolate store he was working in, he brought some chocolates with him to trade, and he traded chocolates to get equipment to go out and seek his fortune. He spent 3 years in the Sierras trying to find gold, and decided, for whatever reason, I don't know if he didn't find any or he just had enough, it can't be an easy life, that he was done. So he came back to San Francisco, and he had spoken to shopkeepers, and the shopkeepers remembered him from 3 years ago when he was there trading his chocolates, and they're like, "Hey dude, you didn't find any gold, but boy, you make really good chocolates, so why don't you do that instead?" So this sparked an idea. He went back to France, worked to save money to buy the equipment to make chocolate, and returned back to San Francisco to open a chocolate factory. He opened his first store along the waterfront, which is where all the commodities were coming into San Francisco at the time. And his store wasn't just a chocolate factory. He sold chocolate, he sold tea, coffee, spices, flavorings, yeast, all those kind of things that were available in his store. But I just want to point out how early he was starting this store. So 1868 was before Rudolf Lindt invented his conch. That was in 1879. 1868 is before Daniel Peter invented milk chocolate with the help of Nestle. That was in 1875. And 1868 is before the Panama Canal was built. That was in 1881. So I'm going to come back to that one. That's important with the chocolate we're going to taste today. But this is how they're early chocolate makers. This is very influential chocolate company in the United States. So 5 generations of Guittards have been involved in the chocolate company since then. You start off with Etienne. So in 2018, they celebrated their 150th anniversary. So yeah, a long time. So Etienne was the founder. He headed the company for 31 years, and he passed away in 1899. The company was then taken over by his son, Horace C. Guittard, and some things happened during his time at the company. Most importantly, in 1906, there was the huge earthquake in San Francisco, which subsequently led to fires and pretty much destroyed most of the city, including their chocolate factory. They rebuilt, so with the help of MJB Coffee at the time, they helped them rebuild. Then Horace C. then expanded in 1921, and he also expanded in 1936. After him, his son, Horace A. Guittard, took over. He was known for automating the production of the factory. Interesting, he was there during World War II, and as we're learning now about essential businesses, the chocolate companies were considered essential businesses, and so he did not go to serve in the military in World War II. He stayed back to run the chocolate company. Also, in 1954, at this time, the factory was on Main Street. In 1954, while Horace A. was in charge, the land was taken over by eminent domain to build a freeway, I believe. And that is when the factory moved to their current location, which is about 20 minutes outside of San Francisco. So we'll call it San Francisco. Horace A. was then, the fourth generation is Gary Guittard, his son. Gary took over as CEO and president of the company in 1989. So Gary's background, he was initially interested in filmmaking, and he went to the University of Denver to study psychology and religion. And he has experience all over the place. So he was in the Coast Guard for a little while. He worked in a mailroom in an ad agency, which then led to him getting promoted to write ad copy for that agency. But when the agency lost a really big account, he lost his job, and being newly married with a new family, he turned to the family business to look for a job, and his dad told him to get some experience. Kid, before I hire you. So he worked as a food broker. He worked in the bakery supply industry, and then in 1975, he joined Guittard. So for a while, there were actually 3 Guittard family members working in the company. So you had Gary, who was working retail. You had his brother Jay, who was working wholesale. And then you had Horace A., who was their dad, who was the CEO and president. Jay took over as president in the 1980s, the mid-80s. And tragically, in 1989, both Jay and Horace A. passed away about 6 months apart from each other. And that is when Gary became the CEO and president of the company. So that's 4 generations. The 5th generation comes up with Gary's children, Amy Guittard and Jesse. So Amy is the director of marketing right now at Guittard. You've probably seen her. She does lots of interviews and things, and she's written the family cookbook with recipes with the family stories in there. So it's kind of interesting. If you ever get your hands on this, you could take a look at that. That was written by Amy, 5th generation. She went to Barnard to study literature and anthropology. Her senior year, she interned at Simon & Schuster in the children's coloring book department, which is cool. There's a whole department for that. And she also worked at Cliff Bar before coming to Guittard to work as their director of marketing. So that's 5 generations continuously running the company. That's amazing to do in this day and age. So a little bit about their chocolate. They tend to be French, Belgian French influenced, smooth, dark roast. They originally sourced all of their cacao from around the Pacific area. And that comes back to what I told you about the Panama Canal. It was very difficult to move goods across land before the Panama Canal was built, and it gave you that shipping route. So most of their beans were sourced from the Pacific area. So 85% of their business comes from within the food industry. So some names that you would have heard of that uses chocolate from Guittard would be See's Candy, Dreyer's, Baskin-Robbins, Williams-Sonoma, Kellogg's. Big companies use their chocolate. Also, pastry chefs use their chocolate. So the rest of that 15% is made up of pastry chefs and us, the everyday consumer. We go to the grocery store and we buy their chocolate chips and their baking chocolate and their tasting chocolate. When Gary took over and became president, he wanted to make the chocolate more like the European brands that he loved. So smoother and more creamier, added extra cocoa butter to their couverture, so there's a difference there. And then he was also influenced by Scharfenberger. When he tasted one of their bars in the early 90s, he thought, wow, this is incredible, and this is a niche that we need to get into. And so in 1997, they were the first U.S. single origin chocolate. They made the first U.S. single origin chocolate. Close to Scharfenberger. All right, so the bar that I'm going to open today is from their Eureka Works collection. This is a special bar made for their 150th anniversary. It is sourced from the same beans that they would have originally used from around the Pacific, Brazil, Ecuador, Indonesia, the island of Java, Hawaii, those kinds of sources. So it's a blend. So let's flip the camera around and open this up and see how it tastes. All right, so let's take a look at this. So Guittard Chocolate, think of it like guitar, the instrument, that's how you pronounce it. Established in 1868, way early on in chocolate making history. San Francisco, 62% cacao, limited edition. Like I said, this is a special made bar for their 150th anniversary. Let's see what it says on the back here. Okay, so the Eureka Works bar is a tribute to the beans that they used to make their first product. So also at that time, there would have been West Coast chocolate and East Coast chocolate. So the chocolate that you would have gotten on the East Coast was coming from different areas like Africa. So it would have had a different flavor than the West Coast chocolate. So there's a little bit of chocolate history there. So let's see. Flavor notes. Here's the countries that the blend. Ecuador, Hawaii, Java is an island in Indonesia. Brazil, it's non-GMO, fair trade certified. This talks about the artist from California. Let's look at the ingredients. We have cacao beans, fair traded. We have cane sugar, cocoa butter, sunflower lecithin, which is an emulsifier, and vanilla beans. So this isn't a 2-ingredient, 3-ingredient chocolate. I don't mind that. I'm not a stickler for that because I think if it makes your chocolate taste better and doesn't take away from the flavor of the chocolate, then go ahead and use it. Oh, you've got a coloring page on the inside by this artwork by the same artist that did the artwork on the outside. That's cool. Right. Oh, my bar got broken in transit. It looks cool. Their mold is neat with the ridges. Looks nice. It's got a nice shine to it. Looks well tempered. Let's see if we can hear a snap. This is a 62 with added cocoa butter. So not a huge snap, but boy, when I snap it, did the aromas get released. Wow. Okay, so let's smell and see what we can smell and then we'll taste. Okay, so for the aroma of this, I can smell the sugar and the vanilla. And I smell a little bit maybe acidity, maybe pineapple. And when you taste it, it has a nice smooth melt. It's got a nice mouthfeel. Again, sugar and vanilla are the upfront flavors. But if you dig in there, you will also get, there's a mild acidity, maybe pineapple, maybe cherry. And then at the end, it gets a little bit stronger as it goes on at the end, but it's still very, very mild. And sugar and vanilla are the forward flavors other than cocoa in here. The smell, again, a little bit of roasted cocoa, but sugar and vanilla. So it's not a horrible, it's not a bad dark milk, but if it bothers you to have sugar and vanilla as the forward flavors, then you won't like this one. They do have other darker bars. So they have, this is the 85% Clair de Lune. It has no cocoa butter added. It's got cherry notes in it, and it's much darker. Has a little bit of astringency and tannin notes to it, and this one as well, 72%. Blend number 7. This one has a little bit of spiciness to it, just a little bit, and a coconut note to it. So I like how they've attributed this collection Etienne. So this is the artisan chocolate. If you're baking their chips, you can get percentages on their chips, and they will be much less sweet than the other chocolate chips that you can buy at the grocery store. So it's a nice looking bar. Interesting for their 150th anniversary that they did. Let's flip around and I'll tell you a little bit what they're doing to preserve cacao at their company. Okay, so Guittard has created something called Cultivate Better, and they have a website connected. You can go to their main website and you can connect into the Cultivate Better website to see this information. And it's something that they do in coordination with local governments, cacao research centers, and NGOs. They started Flavor Labs. Oh, I should also tell you, they're one of the founding members of the HCPF, the Heirloom Cacao Preservation Fund. So that's a fund to preserve the genetic diversity in cacao. But this Cultivate Better is to help farmers in areas understand the importance of fine flavor cacao versus just commodity cacao. Although this whole area is shifting as this work goes. So they started Flavor Labs in Ghana. They do this work at the origins, at the sources. Then they had one in Ivory Coast, and now they have one in Java. The Flavor Labs encourage selecting and propagating material not only based on its ability to grow cacao, but also on its flavor quality. So they work with local research institutes and to breed not only for things like disease resistance or production ability, but also for fine flavor, which is important. And they also teach them how to taste their beans and taste the final product so that they can understand how the processes of fermenting and drying and growing different cacaos changes the flavor of the cocoa. So they have a few areas that they focus on. I'm going to read these so I get them right. So Cultivate Better focuses on cultivating cacao, protecting flavor, ingredient sourcing, farm sustainability, child welfare protection, education, and gender equality. So one of the things that Gary Guittard is known for saying is talking about incremental degradation, which is how over time things get lax, and just these little changes over time can come down the pipe and change your final product so that it's less than what it used to be. And so what they're looking for is to preserve the historical flavor and to get the best flavor out of chocolate, which is awesome. So they're doing that kind of work as well. So they're involved in preserving the genetics and developing fine flavor cacao all over the world, and specifically in Africa, which could use some of that help. So that is Guittard Chocolate. If you ever want to try this cookbook, it's fun. Amy tells little stories about her family when they were eating these foods, and can you imagine growing up having a chocolate factory, visiting your dad at the chocolate factory? How awesome would that be? So yeah, there's some fun recipes in here, delicious recipes to try. Guittard Chocolate is pretty widely available, so you can pretty much get it anywhere in the US. So that is all I have to say about Guittard. 152 years old this year. So quite influential in the United States as far as chocolate goes. So if you like learning about this kind of history and the story behind the chocolate, please make sure to like this video and subscribe, and you will get a new story every Thursday. Thanks!